Good morning. My name is Mindy Thagard, and I'm going to present for you the two faces of holy war between the Christians and the Muslims. When we look back to writings of ancient times, we are given a different viewpoint from different cultures, or in this situation, different religious groups. What stands out is the way each writer can describe the same event or even a character, but on two different ends of the spectrum. We can see this when we read about how Christians describe who Muhammad was compared to how Muslims described him. Muslim writers also used very descriptive images to inform their readers of their impressions of Christian followers. And the writings of multiple Muslim scholars described Christians to be animals and sometimes as even weak individuals. However, the Christian writings suggested that Muslims were merciless and they tortured Christians. We will also explore how both religious groups have some similarities despite their many differences. William Tyre had a different view of who Muhammad was, especially since he describes him as the firstborn son of Satan. Well, this is a very bold statement to describe the prophet of the Muslims. Tyre's rendition of the times described an event in which involved violence and trickery among Muslim followers. So this is where he's getting his viewpoint from. He tells a story where someone threw a carcass of a dog into a place where individuals gathered to pray. It was a very holy area. And it must be kept clean. And then doing this was a disgrace. It was a very wrong thing to do during this time. Immediately, Christians were to blame, and they were all sentenced to death. Well, this seems pretty harsh to sentence everyone to death when you're not really sure who caused this action. One man stood up and he took the sacrifice for all Christians so that they may live. He then goes on to describe Muhammad as their destroyer, because if you didn't follow the Muslim belief, then they destroyed you. They wiped out entire cities. One could deduct that he felt that way because of the dog in the holy place, wanting to get rid of all Christian followers rather than the individual who caused the action. He also describes any successors of Muhammad, specifically Ali, as being more evil in nature and selfish in their ways, which continues to cast a dark shadow over the Muslim faith and their beliefs. On the other hand, Usama ibn Mundi attacks not just the Franks' religious beliefs, but also all aspects of their way of life. He describes them as animals possessing virtues of courage and fighting, but nothing else. So this viewpoint is that he believes Franks can make no sound decisions, that they lead by willingness to fight for whatever they are told to believe in. So they can't make their own decisions on what they should or shouldn't be doing. They just do what they're told to do. So he goes on to tell about how he becomes friends, if you will, with a Frank man. And at the end of the Frank man's journey, he offers to take his son home with him to raise him to be what would be considered a wise man. He graciously declines, in knowing that the only way for his son to become a wise man is for him to raise him himself in the Muslim ways and beliefs in life, and that would be the only way. He then describes Christian physicians and their use of medicine during this time period. He says that instead of finding ways to heal the sick and dying, that they use extreme measures of medicine, which really result in imminent death. There is a story he tells of a knight who had an abscess on his leg, and rather than treat the abscess, find ways to heal the abscess, the doctor suggests cutting off the leg. In doing so, he proceeds to use an axe to chop off the knight's leg, who then bled out and died for no real reason. This just paints a very disturbing picture of the way the other side, if you will, treats their own individuals. Something that was also very interesting that I read was how each party described the same time period but in different ways, or even had similar, but they also had similar ways of belief, such as both the Muslims and the Christians believed that if they fought for their beliefs and died in doing so, that they would be allowed entry into their heaven. This was their reward for fighting for their belief. Peter Tubod describes how the Emir Yagai Sayai, he attempts to convert Renaud, and he describes how Christians they positions themselves to say that they would rather die than to sin by following in Muslim faith. In response to that, he orders all the pilgrims to come before him, and he tortures them to death. He sets an example that you will either follow him or you will die for your belief. But then he goes on and describes how during the capture of Jerusalem, the Christians at that time also declared that they would die and take everything with them rather than convert, where in this situation the Sultan grants them protection just so long as they pay taxes to stay there. So in this situation, it seems as though the Muslims would allow Christian to practice, live in the same area, but it benefited them because they would have to pay taxes to them. We have to remember that some of the literature from the past have some truth to them, and some of them are very exaggerated. It was up to the writer to describe what they wanted to describe, or tell the tale how they wanted to for their readers to believe in, and in doing so, it was documented this time that this was the worst recorded hatred during the Holy War between both religious groups. Each writer did share a common belief about the other, and then that was that they described each other as very vile groups. Neither one of them had very nice things to say about the other, and not just in religious beliefs, but they mocked each other in their practices of those beliefs and just their natural ways of life. It's very clear that neither one of them spent any time getting to know or learn a lot about the other group, and they really probably couldn't because of the war that was going on, and the image of that being that if you don't practice your faith, then you are not for the same as your group, and could be cast as an outsider, or even worse, death. So I hope you learned a little bit about this time period. Thank you for your time, and have a good day.